What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I hope that you're having a beautiful day. Thank you so much, as always, for being here. Today, I am bringing and presenting you my album review of Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Brain Salad Surgery, which was released in 1973. This is their fourth album. And as usual, I will link a playlist down below where you can watch and look at my first initial reactions to each of the tracks on this album. But without further ado, let's go! In 1973, the band had begun not only working on this album, but actually creating their own record label, which would be named Manticore Records. So while listening to this album, I couldn't help but think of that mythical creature in relation to the music here. You have the face and the heart of man in Lake's vocals and warm bass, the lion-bodied Palmer filling this track and this album with roaring rhythms and ravenous percussion, and then the snake-like accuracy of Emerson's bites, whether that was venomous organs and synths or sedated keys. The three-part beast that is ELP provided an album with more twists and turns, with more color and variety than some mythological bestiary. Opening with the first track, Jerusalem, this is ELP's anthemic hymn, of course, based on the hymn Jerusalem. This is one of my favorite ELP tracks. It just makes me want to stand and salute something. The organ-led tribute is a heavenly start to our journey, with ringing bells and perfectly placed drumming. Greg's vocals soar, inspire, and move. Can you really start off on a better foot? Due to some controversies, this track may not have been able to gain any play on the radio at the time, but personally, I'll always bring this one out, okay? It also features the debut of the prototype Moog Apollo, the first ever polyphonic synthesizer. So that's kind of neat. Toccata, the second track, is an adaptation of the fourth movement of Argentine composer Alberto Ginastera's first piano concerto. Atop the rumbling of Palmer's drive, we have intense organ and bass. I really love the way that the music stops at one point for the isolated bass from Greg, and then that kind of starts a whole new little movement there. The little atmospheric drum solo in the middle is also really fun, with the sound effects actually being triggered and played by Palmer. What I find really cool about this one also is just the history behind it. So the band met with the original composer, not only to secure the rights to playing this track and putting it on their album, but also to get his blessing as well. And when Ginastera heard it for the first time, his first reaction was diabolic. He was ecstatic about what the band had done, how they had captured the essence of his piece. And I think that diabolic is a great way to describe this one, because I even listened to the original piece just to kind of compare. And I mean, the original is really fierce and vicious, and ELP did do a great job of capturing that heart and that soul in their own progressive rock adaptation, not adaptation. In the ashes, though, of that diabolic piece, we move into Still You Turn Me On. Still You Turn Me On is one of those romantic Greg-led ballads that at least I personally can't get enough of. It's a track that brings balance to the force of this album. I love the shift into the chorus. It's so sweet, it's so satisfying. The use of the guitar and the harpsichord brings it to life, and it's a magical combination. The way he says, "You turn me on," is so tempting. I know that Greg is the heartthrob of the group. Benny the Bouncer. This brings that same comedic saloon style that ELP has done in past songs. For example, like The Sheriff. The piano drunkenly works at the Silver Dollar Saloon. Percussion is fast and fun, and the vocals veer satirical. The lyrics are even darkly hilarious, as we'll have some more of those later on in the Carnival 9 suite, especially in the ending as Benny finds himself with a new job bouncing in heaven. But now we move ourselves into the epic of this album, taking up a lot of time on this album, Carnival 9, beginning with First Impression, Part 1. The deep chords matching Greg's outspoken performance is just a big standout in this one.
I'll be there, I will be there.
Like that is just one of those really exciting moments that every time it comes up, you're hype. You know what I mean? Like, you're hype. There's a dark sense of adventure through this dystopian debacle. The complicated nature of the song doesn't undermine the songwriting. And in fact, it actually adds to it and towards it. I would also just like to say, as a side note, that I really do believe that Greg is an underrated bass player. Just as a side note, just putting that out there. In some ways, this feels like a mix of the elements from Benny with the intensity of Toccata. The guitar solo. Did you guys hear the guitar solo? That is an unexpected surprise, reigning in the end in a fantastic way. Moving into part 2 of the first impression, Lake, our master of ceremonies, tells us we gotta see the show and that our minds will be blown. And blown they are. From a real blade of grass to 7 virgins and a mule, the ringleader and the band promises to surprise and amuse. Emerson plays his heart out. The guitar returns here, adding spectacle to the performance. The drum briefly soloing with the vocals is so cool. And as always, Palmer's drumming is just a picturesque exhibition. Precise and to the point. Get it? A picturesque exhibition. The second impression of Carnival 9, it's an Emerson extravaganza. The playing here seems so complicated. Palmer's percussion, the mini-moog set to a steel pan sound, is a really masterful brush of creativity. And it's even in this section that we have a reference to Sonny Rollins' saxophone colossus, the track St. Thomas, which on first listen of this track, I recognized, but I couldn't quite place where it was. So it was really cool how in the comments you guys had said like, oh, that's from Saxophone Colossus. And I was like, I haven't listened to that album in a long time, but I did listen to that album many years ago when I was going into my jazz exploration. So that was really cool to have that callback. And that's really cool to see how they referenced other musicians and they weren't just into classical or rock. Like they took and leaned upon everything, making their own way. And speaking of jazz, this track almost lends itself to an early jazz fusion style. The eerie break in the middle is also well needed, creating space and time for the notes to rise and fall, for the music to breathe and linger. For some reason, this part reminded me of the instrumental break in The Devil's Own from David Sylvian. Even though the two don't really sound similar at all, they have a different kind of creative use of space and lingering notes and instrumentation based around space and ambience. And then the ending runoff is just a race to the finish line, the band rushing towards some far off invisible goal that only they are aware of. The final and third impression of Carnival 9 is a march towards destruction. The singing and the mood is very reminiscent of Jerusalem, so that's a welcome return for myself. It feels like a darker turn of the endless enigma in parts. I really like the use of the robotic voice, that kind of nicely affects and accents the narrative of the song. Screaming, Guardians of a Nuclear Dawn. That's spine tingling. We can feel the battle raging on, the band engaging in combat, seemingly with one another in fiery harmony. The machine-like swirls that are echoing throughout call to mind that while the band play like absolute machines, the story is in fact a battle against machines. Speaking of the story, which I haven't really touched on too much, this one is just basically man versus machine. I really like the carnival-like atmosphere of previous impressions, really showing the desperity, if that's even a word, of man at this point, just trying to find any sort of solace and any sort of amusement. But this is the final war, the final battle. The sense of desperation is palatable in the music and of course in the narrative, and the music and the lyrics almost have a I have no mouth and I must scream kind of vibe to it. The ending is up for interpretation, with either the humans winning, the machines winning, or both of them working together with the machines sabotaging and turning on the humans. Who knows? Who knows? So anyways, those are just a couple of my thoughts on each of the tracks here, but let's get into my favorite moment, my favorite lyrics, and my song rankings to close it out. So my favorite moments in the album, there's a lot of good ones, but I had to go with the climax of Jerusalem. I am sorry, but Jerusalem is just, I feel so inspired. Like every time I hear it, it's just one of those tracks that always gets me going. And the climax of it is just a holy anthem. That is good. My favorite lyrics on the album are from Carnival 9, First Impression, Part 2, where the lyrics are, "Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. So glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. There's behind the glass stands a real blade of grass. Be careful as you pass, move along, move along." I just like how these specific lyrics are almost a little fourth wall breaking in the sense that it's a welcome back for fans of the band and, of course, to the music and to the album at this point, but also the commentary, there's a real blade of grass behind the glass. Times are so desperate at this point that even a blade of grass can be put on exhibition, is an artifact from the past. Could it also be perhaps a warning towards the future? And then getting into my song rankings for the album, they are as follows. Jerusalem, Still You Turn Me On, Carnival 9 Third Impression, Carnival 9 First Impression Part 1, First Impression Part 2, Second Impression, Toccata, and Benny the Bouncer. Thank you guys so much for being here and for watching the video. I hope that you enjoyed this review. If you did, please like the video, subscribe if you'd like to see more, of course, and I hope that you enjoy the playlist of my first and initial reactions and my first thoughts on each of the tracks here as well. Thank you so much for being here. If you'd like, you can support the channel on Patreon. It helps me get out more videos quicker because I can spend more time here on the channel, but absolutely you do not have to. I just hope that you enjoyed the past few minutes, and I hope that you come back tomorrow for whatever we have in store next. But for now, thank you so much for being here, and I will talk to you tomorrow.